Welcome to the debate. Imagine receiving a cast list for a television show, and the key players are either fresh out of prison, facing 16 counts of federal fraud, or literally banned from operating a motor vehicle.
Yeah, you'd think you were looking at the docket for a criminal court.
Exactly. But no, you are looking at the official Bravo casting announcement for season 11 of The Real Housewives of Potomac. Filming is currently in full bloom right now, and the sort of controlled laboratory of reality television that we are used to seeing, it's been completely shattered.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at a landscape that is transforming in real time. And the central question we are unpacking today is this. Does this massive, dramatic cast shakeup, which, includes staggering returns, shocking demotions, and just completely unceremonious firings, signal that the franchise now absolutely requires undeniable, high-stakes, real-world consequences to survive? Or does it prove that the delicate chemistry of a dinner party, that meticulously balanced interpersonal narrative, is still the only metric that truly matters?
It is absolutely a paradigm shift. We are looking at a fundamentally different show than we were, even 5 years ago. But I think we are going to disagree heavily on what that shift actually represents for the architecture of the series.
I expect we will. My position on this is quite clear. And frankly, I think the evidence is just overwhelming. The casting decisions for season 11 prove unequivocally that the network is pivoting strictly toward objective, authentic, high-stakes reality.
Really? Strictly high stakes?
Strictly. They are prioritizing cast members who are dealing with severe, documented life crises over those who just, rely on manufactured, behind-the-scenes drama. The era of relying on trivial, pot-stirring arguments is entirely over. Viewers are too smart now.
Well,
They demand factual stakes, and Bravo is building this season around undeniable life and death, or at the very least, freedom and incarceration consequences. Look at the staggering reality of Karen Huger. The Grande Dame was entirely absent for seasons 9 and 10. Why? Because she was literally serving 6 months in prison.
Right.
Following a December 2024 DUI conviction after a high-speed crash that totaled her Maserati. Then you look across the table at Wendy Osefo, who is currently facing 16 counts of insurance fraud.
Yeah, 16 counts.
The network is anchoring the show on undeniable legal gravity, which makes traditional housewives maneuvering completely obsolete.
I come at it from a different way. While the legal situations surrounding those women are undeniably severe and frankly shocking, I think this cast shakeup actually demonstrates that individual life crises are strictly secondary.
Secondary? How can federal fraud be secondary?
Because the network is ruthlessly optimizing for group dynamics and ensemble chemistry. They are valuing these cast members based solely on their narrative function within the collective, not the length of their rap sheets. Reality television is an ecosystem, right? It is not a true crime documentary on a streaming service.
But the crimes are real.
Sure, but if objective, subpoena-level gravity were the only metric that mattered to Bravo right now, breakout stars from recent seasons like Stacey Rush and Tia Glover, women who thrive explicitly on conflict resolution, emotional vulnerability, and being neutral observers, they wouldn't be celebrated. They certainly wouldn't be cast. This shakeup is not a pivot toward the penal code. It is a structural course correction to restore balance to an ensemble that had become far too focused on isolated, messy, and ultimately unproductive behavior.
Which is the fundamental mechanics of how the show is even produced. Let's look at the sheer structural function of Wendy Osefo and Karen Huger heading into season 11.
Okay, let's look at it.
Wendy and her husband Eddie were arrested in October 2025 for allegedly staging an April 2024 burglary. And we aren't just talking about vague allegations here. We are talking about granular, documented details.
The emails.
Yes, the court documents showing emails where Eddie explicitly asks Wendy to add Chanel shoes to the claim just to inflate the payout. They are facing 16 charges. You couple that with Karen Huger, who was just released from prison in February 2026. She is now facing 5 years of probation, and crucially, she has a 1-year driving ban.
Right, the driving ban is huge for logistics.
Exactly. Think about how this show used to work. Early seasons were basically a court of public opinion. Hearsay was enough. Someone heard a rumor, they dropped it at a dinner party, and bam, you had a storyline for the next 8 episodes. But now, the audience is acting like an appellate court. We demand receipts.
I mean, true, but
Only subpoena-level reality, actual dockets, actual prison sentences, and documented fraud passes the burden of proof for the viewer. These legal battles provide a bedrock of authenticity that the show was desperately lacking.
hold on, I have to stop you there because you're confusing the spark with the engine. Let's look precisely at how the source material explicitly frames these situations, because Bravo is telling us exactly what they value here.
What do you mean?
For Karen Huger, the text does not say the core value is her prison sentence itself. The explicitly stated question heading into season 11 is whether she will own her legal troubles head-on or revert to her signature defensive posture. In other words, will the grande dame show the women she has learned a lesson, or will she remain polarizing in group settings?
Well, sure, they have to film together.
Right, and for Wendy Osefo, the material notes a purely logistical question of whether she will even be physically available to film a full season due to her trial schedule. But the narrative value is explicitly framed around how she and Eddie navigate the allegations on camera with the rest of the group.
Because the stakes are so high.
But the crimes, the probations, the emails about Chanel shoes, those are merely catalysts. If Wendy sits in her house alone, reads her indictment, and cries, that is a documentary. The actual quantifiable value to the network lies entirely in the interpersonal friction those events generate when she sits at a table with women who are going to interrogate her about those Chanel shoes. The stakes aren't the legal system, the stakes are the social ecosystem.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. If we accept your premise that it's all about how they navigate things at the dinner table, how do you explain what is happening to the veterans who practically invented that table dynamic?
You're talking about the Green-Eyed Bandits.
At the season 10 reunion.
Oh, the missing package. Yeah, that was brutal.
Now, for the uninitiated, a reunion package is basically your performance review for the year. It proves you had a storyline. Not getting one is a massive, blinking red flag from production, indicating you are on incredibly thin ice.
Definitely.
Then you look at Ashley Darby. Her reliance on her exhausted on-again, off-again relationship with Josh Goodenbert is completely failing to resonate. The consensus is that her habit of merely causing chaos without offering her own authentic stakes is no longer enough to survive.
And most pointedly, look at Robyn Dixon. She was heavily criticized for keeping her actual reality, the deeply messy truth of her marriage to Juan, under wraps. As a direct punishment for hiding that reality, she has been demoted to a friend role for season 11. The network is looking at these veterans and saying, if you do not have severe, undeniable life events to showcase, your historical tenure means absolutely nothing.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the exact reason why they are struggling? I agree completely that the veterans are in a precarious position, but I fundamentally disagree on the mechanism of their punishment. Let's reframe Gizelle Bryant's reunion failure.
Okay, go ahead.
The text explicitly points out that Gizelle was not punished because she lacked a subpoena or a legal crisis. She was punished because during the season and the reunion, she played the mean girl and spent her entire time inserting herself into other people's drama instead of generating her own narrative.
Because she didn't have one.
No, she failed on an interpersonal ensemble level. She broke the social contract of the group by deflecting constantly. And regarding Robyn Dixon, her return as a friend of is explicitly described in the material as a test.
A test of what? To see if she actually has a real storyline?
A test to see if she can be vulnerable and open this time around. If the network only cared about high-stakes trauma, they wouldn't bring her back in a testing capacity at all. They would just fire her and hire someone with a rap sheet. The fact that she is back to see if she can demonstrate vulnerability proves my exact thesis.
I don't know if I buy that.
The network demands interpersonal utility, emotional openness, and group function. You don't need a felony to survive. You just need to be genuinely engaged with the ecosystem, which Ashley, Gizelle, and Robyn simply stopped doing.
But if genuine engagement is the only metric, then why did Bravo just fire people who were doing exactly that? Let's look at the actual firings and new additions as the ultimate proof of concept for my position. Keiarna Stewart and Angel Massie are gone.
Okay, yes, the firings.
Keiarna was a full-time housewife for 3 seasons. She was engaged, but she was let go explicitly because her behavior was deemed desperate and low stakes. She was trying to force her fiancé Greg to marry her on camera, and she was picking unnecessary fights with Stacey.
Right.
Angel Massie, who was just a season 10 newbie, was dropped because she took things too personally and couldn't find her footing. Their exits prove that manufactured low-stakes storylines, the exact kind of interpersonal utility you are suggesting is the core of the show, are simply no longer tolerated.
I wouldn't call forcing a marriage plot interpersonal utility, but okay.
When Karen is literally going to prison, Keiarna begging for a ring on camera looks completely ridiculous by comparison. If you are just fighting about nothing or trying to manufacture a wedding storyline, you are excised from the cast. The network is clearing out the low-stakes clutter to make room for the undeniable gravity of Karen and Wendy.
I'm glad you brought up the departures because you are omitting the most glaring piece of evidence in the entire casting announcement. Now, I bet listeners might be shouting at their dashboards right now. What about Monique Samuels?
Ah, Monique.
And that is exactly where your theory gets tested and completely falls apart. Monique's return in season 10 was a catastrophic failure. Now, Monique is a legacy housewife. She was a main cast member from seasons 2 through 5. She is famous for being volatile, explosive, and ultimately leaving the show after a highly publicized physical altercation on camera.
Right, she brought the high stakes.
She possessed the exact kind of high-stakes, severe reality you were championing. When she returned last season as a friend, it was supposed to be a massive redemption arc. But what actually happened?
She tried to play nice.
Yes, she tried to execute a nice arc. She spent the entire season groveling to Gizelle, trying to repair that relationship, and it completely fell flat with audiences. She was not the same woman, and fans found her totally uninteresting. Why did it fail? Because it broke her established narrative function within the group.
Well, she was suppressing her reality.
Viewers felt the inauthenticity. She tried to change her role in the ecosystem, and the ecosystem actively rejected her. If severe past trauma and high stakes were enough, her mere presence would have carried the season. It didn't.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because Monique's failure was an execution problem, not a conceptual one. She actively tried to suppress the high-stakes reality that made her compelling in the first place, and she suppressed it in favor of the exact kind of interpersonal resolution you were defending.
But she was boring.
She tried to play the ecosystem game, and it failed because audiences wanted the authentic, high-stakes Monique.
But look at who is succeeding right now, Stacey Rusch and Tia Glover. Stacey is explicitly labeled the breakout star of recent seasons precisely because she handles conflict beautifully, brings real vulnerability, and is genuinely invested in friendships.
She is great, I'll give you that.
She doesn't stir the pot with fake rumors, she engages authentically. And Tia Glover, the newbie from season 10, succeeds specifically by being a neutral observer. The material notes she doesn't jump into being the loudest voice in the room. She observes, reflects, and calls out nonsense without actively participating in the mudslinging.
Agree chorus, basically.
Exactly. The text says it perfectly. Not every housewife needs to be a firecracker. Tia's success completely destroys the premise that the show only values high-stakes crises. A functional reality cast needs neutral observers just as much as it needs defendants in a courtroom. If your theory held true, Tia and Stacey would have been fired alongside Keiarna and Angel for not having severe enough problems. Instead, they are celebrated because ensemble chemistry, that delicate balance of the loud, the quiet, the chaotic, and the observant, is the ultimate deciding factor for survival. You need contrast.
You know, I will concede that the presence and success of Tia Glover and Stacey Rusch introduces a necessary complication to my framework. Your point about the ecosystem requiring a neutral observer is well taken.
Thank you.
If you construct a cast entirely of people facing a decade in federal prison, the show collapses under its own oppressive weight. It becomes far too dark, too legally restricted. I mean, imagine how many things they just legally cannot talk about on camera. And it loses the fundamental escapism that reality television requires to function at all.
It becomes unwatchable.
Right. You absolutely do need a Tia to sit at the table and act as the audience surrogate, reacting to the absolute madness of a staged burglary claim or a totaled Maserati. Think about the mechanics of Karen's one-year driving ban.
Oh, it's brilliant from a production standpoint.
Mechanically, that means she cannot arrive at a scene alone. She is physically forced to rely on the other women to drive her. That traps her in a car with them, which guarantees interpersonal conflict. Bravo is using the legal system as a forced proximity device.
Ha, yes.
But you need a neutral observer in that car to say, "Can you believe this is happening?" The neutral observer is the grounding wire that allows the high-voltage shocks of Karen and Wendy's lives to actually resonate without burning down the entire house. So yes, a cast of exclusively high-stakes crises without those meticulously balanced interpersonal utilities would likely fail.
And I will happily concede that the staggering reality of Karen's incarceration and Wendy's pending fraud trial sets an entirely unprecedented baseline of authenticity for season 11. You are absolutely right that the burden of proof for what constitutes a storyline has shifted dramatically.
It had to.
When someone to your left just served 6 months for a DUI, and someone to your right is fighting 16 counts of insurance fraud with emails about fake Chanel shoes and evidence, you cannot simply bring a rumor about a text message to the dinner table and expect the audience to care.
Exactly. It just doesn't register anymore.
The gravity of those two women will inevitably force veterans like Gizelle and Ashley to either rapidly evolve, find genuine vulnerability the way Robyn is being tested to do, or face total obsolescence. The ecosystem I am defending is absolutely being mutated by the sheer radioactive weight of the legal realities you pointed out. The threshold has changed.
It really highlights the broader cultural value of analyzing these casting dynamics. We aren't just talking about the superficial mechanics of reality television. We are looking at a real-time case study in what modern audiences demand from their entertainment. The threshold for authenticity has completely moved. Viewers are far more sophisticated in how they consume narrative than they were a decade ago, and they can spot the seams in a manufactured storyline instantly. Season 11 is explicitly shaping up to be a season of reckoning, and it will be fascinating to observe how the network balances the empirical weight of the judicial system against the delicate chemistry of a dinner party.
Exactly. It forces us to ask what we actually want when we tune in. Do we want to see a reflection of severe human frailty and genuine consequence, or do we want the comforting predictability of social maneuvering and petty arguments? Bravo is making a massive bet that we want both, and that they can exist simultaneously in the exact same room.
Right back to where we began. Usually, when you look at a casting announcement, you are looking at a carefully curated party guest list. You want fun, you want energy, you want a good dynamic. But occasionally, you step into a landscape where the roster looks a lot more like a subpoena, blending undeniable real-world consequences with the absolute necessity of someone being there to witness it and react to it. We are going to leave it to the listener to watch Season 11's reckoning unfold and decide for themselves what truly drives the cultural relevance of the group. Thank you for joining us.